That's right. We need to do the Pledge of Allegiance. You guys ready? Everyone take your microphones off, so I'm not doing this alone. Come on now. All right, you ready? All right. Pledge allegiance to the
flag
of the United
States of America,
to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
Indivisible.
indivisible,
liberty,
justice for all.
Let's hope we're all together the next time we have to do
I
that.
think we'd be better.
All right. We
Teachers
will
use
start.
that for morning meetings in kindergarten to teach them how to do the Pledge of Allegiance. No.
I bet they were more coordinated.
Okay, quick reminders that we're in this format again due to the stay safe order. As for next month, we will hope to be in person, but we'll update you guys next week, but we'll hope that it's possible. Again, as usual at these meetings, the public can listen in and the video will be uploaded later to the website. All the votes are roll call votes, and there's a lot of them this time, so bear with us. And as you all know about your microphones, and then when you're motioning or seconding, if you could just use your last name so we can help keep track of all of that, that would be great. All right, I'm going to start with agenda approval. I don't know of any other changes, any changes to the agenda. Does anybody have any?
I just saw one, just because I was going through it quite thoroughly, making my spreadsheet for the roll call votes. And I don't know if this matters at all, but under G, we go from 1, 2, 3, 4, and then come back in at 6.
Oh, yep, great.
I don't know if that needs to be noted.
Yep, we'll fix those. Thank you. All right, so motion to approve the agenda with those clerical errors, or fixing those errors. Can I get a motion, please?
Strobel.
Motion by Strobel, second.
Easter.
Second by Easter. Any discussion? Okay, can I get the roll call vote, please?
Ms. Bowe?
Yes.
Mr. Strobel?
Yes.
Ms. Forsberg?
yes.
Mr. Crone?
Yes.
Ms. Wheaton, yes. Mr. Easter?
Yes.
Ms. Hennon?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, some future events, please check the district calendar and resource guide or the district website for a complete list of monthly events. Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020, school board work session at 6 p.m. And let's do the consent agenda quick. Is there a motion?
Forsberg.
Easter.
Motion by Forsberg, second by Easter to approve the following items of the consent agenda. Minutes of the May 5th, May 12th, and May 26th school board meetings. Bills paid for April 2020 in amounts totaling $2,896,447 and the personnel items that were attached. Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Bowe?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Strobel?
Yes.
Ms. Forsberg?
Yes.
Mr. Crone?
Yes.
Ms. Wheaton, yes. Mr. Easter?
Yes.
Ms. Hennon?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go to our students right now quick because I'm sure they're super excited to sit here for a long Zoom meeting, but to show our love for you, we're gonna put you in here. Mostly we just wanted to have a chance to thank you guys so much for being with us for the last year. It may not always seem like it to you, but it means a lot to us to have you guys with us every month. So wanted to give you a quick chance to do any last updates you have or any reflections on the last few months. We haven't seen you guys in a while.
Well, the next student council president is Shivangi Pandy, so you'll be seeing her next year. I just really appreciate this opportunity. It's very valuable. I want to go into education reform, so it's so cool to see how things work, and so I just really appreciate this opportunity, and it really means a lot. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just really wanted to thank administration and teachers because these last few months was really hard, but they made it a lot easier to just really understand and get through the school year. And ended off really, really nice. So yeah, I'm really thankful for our entire administration, how like the teachers handle everything. And I echo Nadine. I think this was a really like educational experience, and it was really nice just being there in person every month and just trying to like understand the ins and outs of everything that happened. So thank you guys.
You. Nadine, what are you doing next year? I think we all know, but remind us.
I'm going to Carleton College, and I'm going to be majoring and minoring in political science and education, respectively. So, yeah.
Awesome. Wonderful. Anybody
you.
else have any questions or comments for the students?
I just want to
guys.
say, yeah, I just want to say thank you to both of you for the time you put in this year. Nadine, wish you the best of luck down in Northfield at Carleton. I'm sure you'll do an awesome job. If there's anything that any of us can do, especially considering your interests, that's the work we're kind of doing. So you can reach out to any of us. And Juario, we're going to be seeing you, I'm sure, because you're still going to be around with us. So I'll just say enjoy your summer, and we'll see you in the fall.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Good luck.
Thank you.
Do I go now?
Yes, you can. Thank you for
I really want to stick around.
All right. Thank
You're
you guys.
excused.
Have a good summer.
You too. All right. Those of you who have to stay. Moving on to presentation, special guests, and recognition. Panther Foundation, a presentation of donation, Colleen Peterson.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Panther Foundation Board, it's the annual opportunity for me to present a huge check. And I got home tonight and my youngest daughter, Erin, said, I've always wanted to hold a check like that. So we're going to try to. Here's our check to the school board this year in the amount of $210,435. And what this amount reflects is a combination of $28,672 in grants and special projects that were awarded to projects across the district, as well as some pathways and scholarships, funded training projects, and finally our final installment of the capital campaign, which started 3 years ago, for the stadium and fine arts center improvements. So within that check is $150,000 for that final installment of that. Tonight, you'll see on the recognition of gifts, a combination of some of those dollar amounts, and some of the dollar amounts aren't there. Just remember, this check reflects the grant awards that the Panther Foundation has awarded. Not all of those projects came to fruition this year, or not all of those grant awards were used fully, but it represents the great work that our Panther Foundation, our educational nonprofit organization, does for our district. Included in that amount includes the $17,000 that was raised at this year's Funded Dream at the gala. We sneaked that in right before COVID, so we're very thankful for that. $7,763 will be going towards supporting pathways. And then $10,000 was allocated towards scholarships, and $5,000 of that was used actually this year and awarded for the first time. So my model is fanning me. So thank you, Panther Foundation. Thank you, School Board, and Spring Lake Park Schools community for all that you do to do this wonderful work.
Absolutely. That's just an incredible donation. And the students are so lucky to have the support of the community, as are we, of course. I know it's listed later too in the gifts list, so I'm glad it's there as well. And that, yeah, and you mentioned that. I don't know if others know, but each year there's a group of scholarships that go to seniors, and the Panther Foundation added several scholarships here. I think there were 8 of them actually, so it was wonderful. Yeah, thank you for that. Anybody else have questions or comments for Colleen? Go ahead, Tony.
I just wanted to call out also that the Panther Foundation helped tremendously with the meals this year.
Yeah.
Going out to students. So this check, what the amount that they're giving us, is above what they've done this year to help us feed the students in our district. So huge thank you, and I don't think we can let them know how much we appreciate them partnering with us to do that. So thank you again.
Thank you. I think they funded all of the weekend packs. Is that right, Colleen?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
We were happy to do that. And I know this isn't on the agenda tonight, but since you brought it up, Tony, we did surpass 100,000 meals.
Wow.
So it was
Wow.
12 weeks of making sure that our community was nourished. But the Panther Foundation's commitment to the weekend packs was an important part of that, and something that we're continuing through the summer.
Yeah, you know, I think the district is always, well, I know the district is always grateful to the Panther Foundation, but in moments like this, when there are real times of need and unknowns and crises, it was just especially wonderful to have that safety net. So thank you. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Thanks again. Moving on to discussion reports and information items. Number 1, engaged, enthusiastic learners align the work of adults to continuously improve personalized instruction and responsiveness to meet our students' unique and varied needs. Summer School 2020 overview, Ms. Colleen Peterson and Dr. Hope Brown.
Sure. Jeff, am I just kicking this off here? Jeff's
I
definitely
can't hear you.
But I'm just pulling that up to share it right now. So,
Okay.
I have it ready, so.
So last meeting, I know that Jeff shared an overview. I was out of town that night, so I'm sure he did a job sharing where we were at and what our plans were. In front of you, you see our document. We are well underway with our planning. I think Jeff shared last time that we had over 800 students. We actually had 868 students referred for our K-5 summer programming options this year, a bit higher than usual. And it was exciting to see because we were offering summer K-5 programming in such a different and unique way due to COVID. But as you can see, within the timeline, we are well underway. This week, we are busily contacting all of those 800 students and their families to find out if they are indeed interested in continuing the programming. And then as of Thursday of this week, transportation will start to get underway as far as routing and making sure that we're communicating with families those transportation routes as of next Tuesday. And then June 22nd, we're going ahead with the program. So as you can see here, I'm not going to run through word for word the three different programs. There's 4 total, but the 3, Summer Connect, Summer Step Forward, and the Summer Jump, are those that were the referral programs. So the 800 students were referred for one of those 3 programs. I can tell you as of today, as of this afternoon, that for the Summer Connect program, 105 students have registered and told us that they're committed. The Summer Step Forward, which is the, and to note that Summer Connect program is all online, it's remote, it's virtual learning, a continuation of what we've been doing for the last 12 weeks. The Summer Step Forward is the 1 day a week in person on site, and then the other 3 days of learning is a continuation of EFL. We have 106 students who have registered for that program and committed to do that. And then finally, Jeff, if you can go to the next page here, the Summer Jump program. That program is for students. We're bringing them on site 2 days a week. And then the other 2 days, they're continuing in an online remote learning environment. We have 95 students enrolled for that program. So today was the first day that I looked at the numbers in that sense, and I was pleasantly surprised that the parents across the board are choosing the programs in a really equal way. And so it's exciting to see. It'll be exciting to see this program roll out in a couple of weeks. The Summer Inspire, we are planning to have registration for those programs begin June 22nd. So those programs will be mainly community ed, enrichment, interdisciplinary 1 and 2 week options. I have a coordinator busily working on that, as well as the referral programs. But our hope is to start those programs July 13th. So that gives us a little bit of time to make sure that the referral programs are up and running, and that we have enough time to market and make sure that the kids have the opportunity to see it. I also believe as things continue to be opened up in our community, from the YMCA to other sports and activities, waiting just a little bit to open up these opportunities, I think will benefit both the students and the school district. So are there any questions that I can help with?
I have a question, Colleen. And I'm sure this was covered and I've forgotten, but for each of the referral programs, were the students referred to a specific program or were parents allowed to choose within the three or both?
There was a bit of variability in how it actually rolled out, but the intent was that the students were referred based on the program that the teacher felt like they would be the most successful in for summer. The families who have asked to be changed or moved around, we've attempted to do that the best that we can, but for sure we're starting with where the teachers referred the students and go from there.
Thank you.
And I should add, Amy, part of that is because of the limited number of students we can bring on site, both from a transportation aspect as well as the students on site. We're just not able to bring all 800 students on site for 4 days a week, which would have been a more typical traditional looking summer program. So this summer is looking extremely different, but it's exciting to see it come together.
Anybody else? And forgive me, I can't see everybody at the moment with the document on the screen. So just shout out if you got questions. Okay, and this document is also in both of these documents are in the on the SharePoint if you haven't seen them.
I'm never sure whether I'm muted or not. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Now, the numbers that you gave us add up really to be about 300 students. So it's about 300 out of the 800 who have taken advantage of this programming.
That's correct. It's not atypical for summer programming. In fact, these numbers are higher than they were last year for more of the traditional type programming. Typically, registration would have started in April, and we would have communicated with families back in February and March at conferences. So we're squeezing 2.5 months of registration into 2.5 weeks. So our commitment to calling each family and getting a hold of them, we're doing the very best that we can getting a hold of the family. I think it's more we're having trouble getting a hold of everyone than it is everyone saying, no, I don't want to be a part of it. The numbers of families saying, no, I'm not going to be a part of it is very, very small. We just haven't reached the other 500 students.
Do you have space if more students are interested?
We're going to figure it out.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, if it makes sense, I'll transition into talking about the 612 summer learning program. That document is also in front of you. We are, both Westwood and the high school are working on the final student identification for programming this week. Their programming focuses at both schools focus on students who ended trimester 3 for any courses as either a not yet, meaning that students did not, they need more time to demonstrate their learning on course learning outcomes, or they ended the trimester as an NE or a no evidence, meaning throughout the trimester, students did not provide any type of evidence of their learning for any myriad of reasons for that. And so we couldn't give a grade of their learning because we had no evidence to assess where they were at with that. And so you'll see similarities across both schools, but we'll start with Westwood. So Westwood is doing programming together for their students who are not yet and students who have not submitted any evidence of their learning. And they're starting their programming this week, not with direct necessarily with students, but with a position for summer learning that they're calling a summer learning advocate. And so this week, as students are identified, that advocate and student will partner together. the students at Westwood have both a learner profile and learner map, and those learner profiles were updated based on the student experience with extended flexible learning, so that they can look at, okay, based on what worked for you, where you struggled, now what's the type of summer learning that's going to serve you best to meet those learning outcomes. And so then you'll see those options that summer learning advocate will work on with the student. So students may continue in extended flexible learning. For those students who participated, it generally worked for them. They just need more time to master the learning outcomes. That's probably the option that would be considered for them. And then that looks, again, like both asynchronous and synchronous learning, but that synchronous learning will happen much more 1-to-1, 1-to-2, 1-to-5, small group. Another option that the advocate and student can choose is that of hybrid learning. So generally speaking, students who maybe had some inconsistent participation in extended flex learning and primarily need support on less so on the content of what they're learning, but more so on organizational skills, time management, and work completion. And so in that hybrid format, students will continue through asynchronous learning and will come in person to Westwood once a week to work in a bit of a study center. And their summer learning advocate and or some content area teachers will be there to support them with those skills. And then finally, the third option for programming at Westwood would be in-person learning. And for students who had very limited to no participation in extended flexible learning, it's not a lot of students, but there are some, and we wanted to make it optional and available for them to come in person 2 times a week for a little bit more extended time to engage them in their learning. And for those students, again, as the advocate partners with students and families, they'll be able to say, hey, what works better? If you have multiple courses you're working on, should we tackle one at a time? Or should we look across the courses and design learning for you to achieve those outcomes in a multidisciplinary way over the course of the programming? So that's what's happening at Westwood. Again, none of that starting this week, just starting some of those conversations so we can personalize the approach. At the high school, their programming, again, you'll see some similarities, but they're differentiating between programming for students who are not yet, meaning they need more time to demonstrate to master their learning, and students who are no evidence. So the students who submitted very little work throughout the try. And so if we start with the group, students who ended trimester 3 with a not yet in a course or multiple courses, again, these are students who participated, who were engaged with the learning that had been designed, but need more time and more support from teachers. And so that will start as early as next week. They'll continue to work with teachers in those intensive small group settings or 1-to-1 settings 3 to 4 days a week. The teachers and students will set the schedules for their 1-to-1s or small groups. And then as students demonstrate their learning of the course learning outcomes, so that they have met the course learning outcomes and completed the course, then that programming will discontinue. So it's a little bit more fluid here at the high school level. Continuing learning for students who are no evidence. Again, any students who had no evidence in 1 or more courses, try 3, and who had passed the courses previous trimesters, they'll work in the same model of that summer learning advocate that I described for Westwood. So teachers will partner with kids to identify what approach is best going to meet your needs to continue your learning. And you'll see those options are similar to what I described for Westwood. So extended flexible learning with more synchronous 1-to-1 small group, or an in-person study center with some direct teaching and or workstations with teacher facilitators, and then possible multidisciplinary learning opportunities. So then in addition to that, what we have typically done for summer learning program at the high school level is partner with Metro Heights Academy. So this next option that you see is still having that as our what has been our typical summer programming, still offering that as an option, but really looking at the students for whom that would be a benefit to. And as we've looked at that, the high school team has said students who really had very little participation in extended flexible learning and who need to recoup an entire year of learning through a course, not just trimester 3. These would be students where our counselors for personalized learning will work with them and in partnership with Metro Heights. And that kind of wraps up what is happening at the 612 level, and I'll open it up for questions there.
Great, thanks, Hope. Does anybody have questions, comments?
I have a question. You're reaching out to these students to see which program they want to go into or they can go into. What if you have trouble contacting them or they're just not responding? Or is there any further action taken, or where do they go?
We've been talking about that at secondary, because students who had limited participation in extended flex learning, our staff and teachers have been reaching out constantly, actually, over the last 12 weeks. And so we're talking about some different hows to reach out to students and families, where we're partnering with we might be partnering with our community or student and family advocates. We might be partnering with our social workers, in which has already happened, but in some different ways than what we have over the last 10 weeks. So great question, John. And that's something that we have already talked about and talked through what are some different scenarios that we could play out to better reach those students and families.
This is Tony.
Thank you.
I had a question. It kind of ties on to John's question. So those students that are participating in the programs, are we building anything around building the skills for maybe more self-directed learning? And the reason I ask is because we don't know what the future is going to be. We don't know what trimester 1 is going to be coming in the fall. So I'd hate to see them, we have to go through this again and not really give them the skills to be able to, study independently.
Yeah, absolutely. Another great question. So for an option at both sites is based on the student and what their needs are. And if it does fall in that self-directed, organizational, establishing a study place at home or whatever those situations might be, that's the level of personalization that we want to get with the students, so that then when they come, we're not only the summer learning advocate, the teacher facilitator, they're not only working on, okay, so let's recoup some of these learning outcomes, but they're really talking about how do you work on time management? How do you work on organizational skills? And those are skills that we teach and work on at grades 5-12 across the board through our AVID programming. Those are all our AVID strategies that we teach to all of our kids and we practice with, but this will really be personalized to the kids and where they're at, knowing that that actually is, yes, one of a great need of a number of our kids. So
Thanks.
yep.
Anybody else? Thank you, Hope. Really appreciate the update. Okay. All right, anything else for the summer school update? Anybody? Okay. All right, moving on to effective operations. Improve our effective management of human, financial, and physical resources. Monthly financial report for April 2020. Ms. Amy Schultz.
All right, good evening, board. So tonight we're going to go through our monthly financial report for April. And let me figure out how to pull it up here. It just changed my... All right, so whoops. You don't want that one. There we we go. Is it forwarding for anyone else?
I can see it. Oh, I see. You can't get it to.
Can't get it to move. And it just changed you and took me away from it. Karen, do you have access to it? Oh, look, give me a minute.
Yeah, I think it's on SharePoint.
I went to slideshow, it took it away from me. Sorry about.
Amy, if you want me to pull it up, I can pull it up.
Can you? I can't. As soon as I go to slideshow, it won't let me forward.
Just go, I just need you to close out of it and I'll pull it up.
We can see it like this too if you just kind of click on individual ones.
You got it now?
Yeah, you're gonna want it to work a little better for the budget one. I have a feeling.
Gotcha.
This one I wasn't as concerned about, but that's the monthly financial report for April. Here we go. Treasurer's report is cash basis. Receipts and disbursements both a little lower than what we're usually seeing in April. Obviously, a variety of reasons. Most obviously COVID, but you can see food service started with a negative balance, and that's food service tends to, their fund balance isn't very high. And a lot of their receipts come in the month following meal sales as the reimbursements are submitted to the federal and the state. So what we see with that one is we would have submitted probably 2 months worth, things were coming in, but we're ending with negative balances in both food service and community ed. Again, those two programs that were most impacted by those fee-based programs, and April being the first full month that we did not have students in our buildings. So the April receipts for the food service will come in, and you can see those on the May report, being as those were submitted after the month end, and it's cash basis. So on the expense side, or sorry, the next slide is the statement of revenues. Our month to date, year to date, compared to the budget that was revised in February. So it is not the budget revisions that we'd be asking for tonight. It was back in February. And then that year to date comparison, you can see really we are right on to where we have been in previous years. As far as percentage wise, a little lower on food service, but general funds right where we would expect it to be. Community ed, again, also a little lower. Again, this is the fee-based programs where refunds were issued for preschools and some of those. But overall, the rest of those are right where we would expect them to be. So the statement of expenses is that same, we're seeing that same thing. We've really, with the budget revisions, come in line on the general fund with where we have been the past few years. And as each month passes by, our capital expenses kind of merge in with our year to date and are a little more reasonable compared to the first few months of fall. So again, food services, we did not need to purchase as much food. But again, those expenses are still coming in. And then there are other ones are right where we would expect them. So just a very typical month. The one thing, again, our receipts were lower than expected. That was a lot based on the county not issuing us our full May or tax statements, and they're kind of holding those back. We'll see that more in May and June, where they did not issue us our full cash, and that was expected as more counties have kind of allowed people to pay their taxes later. So we'll see that really hit the next 2 months more. So that's all I have for the monthly financial report of April. If there are any questions.
Yeah, anyone have a question? Okay. Moving on to budget planning, fiscal year 20 budget revisions and fiscal year 21 proposed budget.
All right, and on this one, Jeff and I will tag team a little bit. This is a presentation that, again, as we go through this for the public, the board has seen this budget multiple times, and you'll see that when we get to the planning calendar. So we do this really at a high level. And all of these will be posted to the website, so they will be available to view as well. So starting with the purpose of a budget, it really is to align our resources to the purpose, vision, and needs, align that again with the direction of our strategic plan, and making sure that the decisions we're making for this next year position us to make good decisions again in the future. So while the board is being asked to approve just a one-year budget, we always look forward and make sure that those decisions aren't only just one-year decisions, that we are able to serve our students in the future with the same program that we would offer next year. So again, ultimately aligning those resources, we want to make sure that we are meeting those needs and improving the learning of each of our students and supporting our staff to be able to do that. So the next one, so under the current calendar, starting with the budget revisions, this is for the 2019-20 school year. This budget was initially approved back in June of 2018. A budget revision was done in February. So subsequent to that original adoption, we will make budget recommendations for changes if there are anything that was differing from our initial assumptions. In a typical school year, that does happen. So tonight is the final budget revision that we're recommending to the school board. The only changes in the general fund, revenue and expenditures. The revenue adjustments are for increased enrollment, interest earnings. Interest rates were actually high for much of the year before they fell. Federal entitlements went up slightly. The 2018-19 under accruals, which when we closed out the 2018-19 school year, we were very conservative in special education because there were a lot of funding formula changes for that year. So a lot of districts had done that. And then when the final entitlements were done, we did come out better than what we had recorded. So that then gets pushed into the 2019-20 school year. It's one-time funding. So we did see decreases in gate receipts and participation fees in athletics and activities as expected. As far as our revenues, the only ongoing adjustment that we're making is to enrollment, where we did increase that. On the expenditure side, it does reflect increases in special education transportation. That was the only area in transportation increased, as well as net COVID related estimates and facilities project timing. So some of our projects being pushed into the 2021 school year. We really do not know all of the COVID impacts yet. We do not know if we'll push any of the CARES funding back into 1920. Those are things we'll do our best to estimate at this time, and we'll keep the board up to date and make sure we bring any recommendations to the board at that time before any adjustments are made. So with that, the 2019-20 budget revisions, and the board did see these at the work session 2 weeks ago. The two yellow cells are those that are the recommended changes. So just to the general fund, revenue and expense. So what the board approves though, through part of the action item is the total budget by fund. So that is why you see the entire, each fund listed. Again, the only change are those yellow highlighted cells. So I think maybe I'll pause if there's any questions from the board before we move on to the 2021 school year.
Yes, and we will be voting to approve this shortly. So yeah, so if anyone has any questions, this would be a good time. Okay, thanks, Amy.
Jeff is going to take the next few.
Okay, wanted to make sure I was not muted anymore. So first off, just like we do every year, as we look at the resources, Amy kicked it off talking about this, is how do we align our resources around what we're trying to happen with it, what we're trying to accomplish with our district purpose, our district vision, and just advancing the school district. This year, we learned this spring, more important than ever as we go forward next year, is that area of innovative and personalized learning. And we really need to capitalize on that. We were able to this spring, and while things weren't perfect, things did go as well as could possibly be expected this spring. And we're excited about next fall and the possibilities, and I'll be talking about that in the superintendent report. Well, normally, in a normal year, we share what some of our district operational plan projects will be for the next year and those priorities. This year, our focus is really going to be preparing for the possibilities we might face next fall. And so what we're going to do with that is look at how can we really leverage personalized learning and advance that work next year. So that's really where we're aligning our human resources, our fiscal resources, our time resources in the next year. And as you know, as we did that, that's really what everything that you're going to do that Amy's going to walk through has been aligning these resources. The budget that she's presenting aligns with the echo. Oh, I'm going to mute people. But what you can see is that with this guiding change, the budget that Amy's going to walk us through, as we talked about at the work session, really aligns with the desired results that we established within the guiding change earlier in the year. And she'll hit on a couple of those specific parameters as we move forward. So we're excited about the future, and I think we have a really effective budget that Amy will walk you through now. I'll hand it over to Amy.
All right, so when we've talked about the board has seen both the budget revisions, the board has also had a lot of information over the past year about the 2020-21 budget. We really started planning this last spring as the board has kind of taken that more long-term budget forecast view. And then between July and December, we spend a lot of time looking at our property tax levies, making sure those are submitted to the Department of Education or estimates. That preliminary does go out in September, but the final property taxes are approved by the school board at the December meeting. The taxes approved that night are actually revenue then. So the board approved those in December of 19. Those taxes are collected in 2020, and we see the revenue for our 2021 school year. So between June and May, so from last June through this past month, we have continued to walk through with the school board and made sure we've agreed on the budget assumptions, the parameters, that guiding change document that Jeff was just talking about, as well as how that impacts the long-term projections. And we've done that at various work sessions. Then 2 weeks ago, the school board did see the proposed budget during the work session. And then tonight it is recommending for approval. So that would be later on tonight, that is an action item that we are asking the board to approve. And we are required to have a budget approved prior to June. So then with that, the next slide does get into a little more detail about our guiding change. Because you could not have possibly read that on the screen the way it was pulled up as the guiding change. We want to make sure that you can kind of see those assumptions laid out a little more. So we'll walk through those. The 2020 legislative session really had a limited impact on the budget for this upcoming school year, but the 2019 legislative session had several things. Most of them impacted the 2019-20 school year and carried forward. A few of them did have small changes again to the current or upcoming school year, which is the 2% increase in the formula allowance. It was 2% each of the 2 years. And the development of a cross-subsidy reduction aid to help offset the unfunded costs of special ed. And so we'll talk a little bit about that one coming up as well. So on the revenue side, the assumptions that we're using are an increase of 75 students total for students served. And that brings our enrollment to an average daily membership of 6,124 students. So we probably serve closer to that 6,200 to 6,300 students. Some of those are part-time or do not stay with us for the entire school year. They might move. So as an average daily membership, that's what that number reflects. The 2% of the general education formula increase was $129 per student then. We did see an increase in our compensatory aid after a reduction last year. That is based on state aid formulas, but we have utilized, and we want to make sure the board is aware of that, flexibility where we are allowed to make sure that we are really utilizing that funding to meet the needs of all of our students across the district. Again, that increase in special education funding, including that cross-subsidy aid. So what the cross-subsidy aid was new for 2019-20. And it was a 2.6% of the unfunded part of your special ed, which the district brought in about $144,000. That increases for fiscal 21 to 6.43%. So it's an increase of about $200,000 for next year over what we had the current school year. We'll continue the QComp program. Federal title grants are consistent with what we were receiving in 2019-20, as well as other federal programs with stuff like special education and other miscellaneous income, which are gate receipts, participation fees, smaller items like that. So On the expense side, our assumptions are that we would have inflation on only purchased services and allocations tied to student enrollment. So the purchase services side of that is the inflation in those areas that are really hard to control the increases in, such as utilities. And then when it's tied to student enrollment, it's areas like supplies. Staff costs are based on continued board and administrative approach that we've used in the past. Transportation increase is based on our contract terms, as well as usually about one route for enrollment growth. We will continue to finance our maintenance plan with a combination of long-term facilities, maintenance revenue, and general fund revenues, and continue to fund those board-directed facilities projects within the budget as we are able, and then continuing to maintain our class size targets, kindergarten through 12th grade. So the desired results really is that resulting in a structurally balanced budget, and this is something that we have seen a huge benefit as a district, that the board has continued to take this approach to have a structurally balanced budget and ensure that our revenues exceed our expenditures on an ongoing basis. It did give us that flexibility to address COVID in the moment, rather than waiting to hear what funding might come through, and make sure that we could meet the needs of our families regardless. And so really that structurally balanced budget is something that we will continue to keep as a desired result. Jeff talked about aligning those resources, using those to make sure we have those funds to invest in change, improvement, and innovation. We will continue, even though we do have a structurally balanced budget, to review all of our areas and make sure that our current system continues to align. And then with that, we would reflect our negotiations assumptions and investment in human resources. So the next slide addresses a little more that the COVID. So within the proposed budget for next year, we do not have any revenue for the CARES Act or any expenses related to how we may have to change our system. So with that, we know that there will be budget adjustments that we will be proposing in the fall as we know more. As that scenario planning plays out, we will have a better idea of expenses that are related to it. But with that, we haven't proposed it to be in our budget just yet. Applications for these programs, the first of them just posted yesterday. So we'll make sure we fill out those applications and get those in. With that first one is the Governor's Emergency Education Relief. About $128,000 is our district's allocations. Those just came out this, might have been Friday or yesterday as well. Friday, elementary and secondary school education relief. That is about almost 400,000. And then that's a formula-based one. So that's based on our title allocation, which is a federal grant we receive, based on the number of students we have on free and reduced. And then a part of that as well is based on a grant, and that's that remaining 221,000. So in total, we're getting 744,000. These can be used for various things within the GEER and the ERRER, the two smaller amounts. Those are really focused a lot on technology access and summer programming, as well as the ERRER, that last one, also mental health as well. When it comes to the larger one, that is much more broad to how we can use that. And it does include really any activities necessary to continue to maintain our services and meet our students' needs. With this, that is one that typically our title funds, we have a non-public component of those, meaning that within our title funds, we have to set aside an amount to meet the needs of our resident students who attend non-public schools. And with that, it's based on the number of students they have on free and reduced. So the Department of Education has really followed that same guidance, and it's the guidance that's currently within the CARES Act, that the amount of money that we receive, which is based on our free and reduced student population, would be allocated still to our non-public schools based on their free and reduced population as well. Currently, the U.S. Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, has indicated she's pursuing a rule change that would change how that's allocated to the private schools, and it would be based on their total enrollment, not their enrollment of students on free and reduced lunches, which would then greatly increase the amount of money that we would be needing to set aside out of our funds for private school. So with that, it's just something that we are trying to be aware of, and we're going to follow MDE's guidance right now to set aside more for the private school portion of it based on that, just in case.
Amy, can I ask two quick questions? Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to jump in real quick there because I think this is going to be one of those that if this does continue, if that's the boss does that, it just, to be honest, it doesn't make any sense. I know that this is something that AMSD and others would come out against. And so that would be something that we would have to come out against because we receive the resources based on our free introduced lunch count, not our total population. And we don't have as many private schools as some of our neighboring districts, but those that do would lose well over 50%, if not more, of their resources if they had to distribute that to all the private schools in their district. So it's really an inequitable way to distribute those resources. So I just think it's something we wanted you to be aware of. We're not going to be able to, at this time, as we do planning, be able to use all those resources because we're going to have to at least follow that MDE guidance that might be a rule, administrative rule that the commissioner of the Federal Department of Education would put in place. So we just wanted to make you aware of that.
Okay. Yeah, so that was going to be one of my questions to clarify that because that seems really inequitable, as you said. And then my other question was you had talked about you were getting ready to, you were submitting applications. Is that, but this money has already been allocated to us?
It's been allocated. We have to apply to receive it.
I see. Okay, thank you.
We do that with all of our federal grants. There's an application process for each of those.
Got it. Thank you.
So yes, as long as you can show how we will use the funds and that it fits within their guidance on them, we would be allocated those amounts.
Got it. Thank you.
So this is always
real quick.
Yes.
When do we know when the U.S. Department of Education, Betsy DeVos, is going to make that proposal? How long do we have to wait?
I don't know. Right now, we're really just following AMSD and the Department of Education's guidance on until we do hear something to set it aside. As in for us, it's not nearly as impactful as it is for a lot of other districts. So. All right, so on the enrollment side, this is always a fun graph, I think, for me to see that continued consistent growth that we have seen in our student population. We are 4 kids short of 100 kids per year. We've got about 996 students in 10 years. We are being conservative, so I would expect that to actually break 1,000. But as you can see, we really hit that peak several years ago with our grades K through 4. And now we're starting to see those at the grades 9, 12. And that really is, when we had our demographic study done, that it really is playing out in where we're seeing our students. The growth slowed down at the elementary level and has stayed consistent. And now those students have started moving through our system. So we're seeing them in the middle and high school levels. So again, you can see that top one is where that 6,124 students would be for next year. With that, then the next slide is talking about our levy resources. And as we were putting this together, Jeff and I were surprised that this was November, that we actually had a levy this past November. It seems like it was a long time ago. But in November, our district voters did renew both the operating levy and the capital projects levy that we did have out there, and that they were set to expire after this current school year. So effective next school year, had those not passed, the funding would have gone away. They were both overwhelmingly approved by our residents, and we are very appreciative of that. So now each one of those will provide funds for 10 more years. So they will expire after the 2029-30 school year. With that, the operating levy generates $1.3 million and can be used for any general school district needs. Capital projects levy also $1.3 million. And that is really to provide the essential technology systems in our classrooms, operations, and then district security and safety systems. We have not increased our operating levy since 2002. That has to be one of the longest out there in the state for that. But we really do appreciate that we've continued to get that voter support when we have asked. And that does, we didn't look up where we fall within the Metro district, but we were at I think it was 39th out of 41 last year, that we know we haven't moved up. So by not asking for more. But again, we are now set on our existing levies for 10 more years. Projections will show where we need to go from there, but we are structurally balanced right now, so. Let's long-term facilities maintenance revenue, and this is a levy component. The long-term facilities maintenance revenue replaced the old health and safety and deferred maintenance. So these funds are restricted for use within the area of really maintaining our facilities. So it does include some health and safety areas, fire inspections, fire extinguishers, eye wash stations, things like that, as well as replacing carpet, roofs, repaving of parking lots, painting of classrooms, those types of things. So that's what this funding is used for. A special slide on this one, really, because the school board is going to be asked later in the meeting to approve specifically our 10-year plan for long-term facilities maintenance. And that is submitted to the Department of Education. So in the school board did see that at the work session 2 weeks ago as well. And those funds are included in the budget that is also being asked to be approved. Also included in our budget and an action item later on in the meeting is the Northeast Metro 916's long-term facilities. As an intermediate district, they do not have the ability to levy for that. So as a member district, we do levy our proportionate share. For this next year, we don't have their final number yet, but their projection was just under 15,000 would be Spring Lake Park share for them. So again, those will be action items later on in the meeting. So on the next slide, this shows our general fund revenue. So this does include the operating capital and the long-term facilities. And this is our revenue side. It has changed only slightly from last year. Our state aids went up 1% and our other went down 1%. Last year at this time, we knew we did have the Education Foundation grant of $200,000. So that had been included, which kind of jumped up our other. But really, we're right in line with where we've been in the past. That's really the only change in percentage that we had from the previous year. Again, you can see we're highly reliant on state aids. So that formula adjustment, the 2%, while really helpful, is still just 2% of what really comes down to about 60% of our budget. The rest of the state aids are made up of a lot of separate components. So this reflects our revenue for next year. And then on the expense side, you can see most of our expense, as with all school districts, is people. So you can see a compensation component that is 69%, and then purchased compensation, which is about another 5%. And that is where we have a bus company that we contract with. So all of our bus drivers do work for the 2 bus companies we contract with. And we've tried to show this so that if we were comparing to other districts that maybe have their busing internally, we would also be able to show how we compare to them. So combined, we're about 74% compensation. With that, last year it was 72%. So it has gone up 4%. That really relates to the capital projects side of that, that we're now showing at 7%, and last year was 9%. Last year we had the athletics and activities, a roofing project. We had a lot of very large capital projects work that we were being done that we were using the general fund to pay for. So this year, that being much lower has really just changed those percentages. Otherwise, they really are right in line with where they have been in the past. So our next slide, and this is our final slide. This is the budget that the board is being asked to approve. The part on the bottom with the asterisk where it breaks out what our general fund is made up of between the general, the capital, and the long-term facilities. That's just for your information. And it's because we've shown that that way to the board for a lot of years. Really, mostly to even out when those capital projects get large, so it doesn't make our numbers look like they're fluctuating as much. But so you can see in total, what we're asking the board to approve tonight is a revenue budget of $91,387,229 and an expenditure budget of $91,318,299. So that will be what we are asking for approval on tonight. So are there any questions or anything you think I missed?
Yeah, no questions. We're approving the budget. We're approving the long-term maintenance revenue, and also, as you said, the 916 long-term maintenance revenue. So all votes tonight. So if anybody has questions, it's a good time. I can't see anybody, or not, I can't see everybody, so just speak up if you have questions. Amy, quick question I had is you had some assumptions, similar assumptions that we usually do with busing costs. And I'm guessing that could be a bit of a question mark as we go into the fall, depending on what the requirements are. And so I'm assuming right now we're just approving sort of a budget, assuming everything goes as it normally would, and then we would adjust as needed down the road.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I actually missed that. I had that written down to make sure to say that we have budgeted as though this fall would look like every other fall in the past. We know that is not going to be the case. But having so many unknowns, that's where we're starting. This summer, we hope more of that becomes clear. We know we're going to be bringing changes to the school board to account for any changes and how that looks. When it comes to our bus contracts, our rates are approved based on the contracts that we've signed. But yeah, the routing and what that looks like, especially in transportation, will be different.
Right. Okay.
Right now, it's based on it if it looked the same.
Right. Which I get, because how do you know at this point? Anybody else have questions before we move on to action items?
I've got one. So just to reiterate, the money that's been allocated for, it looks like a combination of state and federal on COVID relief is not part of the proposed budget, but we're going to factor that into whenever we're going to need to do budget revisions. Those will be factored in at that time.
Yeah, we have not included the 744,000 in revenue or any expenses.
Right.
That might come up as well. Really, we only get the revenue if we have the expenses. So we're trying to make sure we would mirror those at some point in the future when we know what those are.
Okay. So none of that is taken into consideration for this budget. We're going to deal with those things later through the revision process.
Right. Yeah, once we know a little more like what Chair Hannon mentioned about transportation. I would be surprised if transportation isn't more expensive than we allocated. That would be one of the areas we could use the larger pot of money for.
And then the overall budget of 91.3 or 4, what is the percentage increase from our last budget? I could have done the math, but I didn't.
You know what? I didn't either. I can certainly get it for you though.
Okay. I can probably do it too. But...
And I know it's fluctuated year to year a little bit based on how many capital projects we're funding out of there as well. So, but I will get that for you.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Anybody else? All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Okay, moving on to superintendent's report.
Unmute.
Okay, there we go. Two things that I'd like to share with you. First off, it's come up now, and as we look to next year, obviously we have to be doing some planning with COVID. So what we've done is we put together some scenario plans and looking at various scenarios, and I wanted to share this with you. I can tell you that it's interesting getting emails from parents now. Don't get a lot. Most of the emails I'm getting are like, wanting to acknowledge the work the teachers and principals and others did this spring, but then I do get some advocating for us to make sure that we're back in school full force next fall. And then I get others saying, until this is all gone, I want to be sure that you're not bringing kids back to school. And my response to all of them is, like you, I'm looking forward to see what the guidelines are that we have that are and what we're going to be allowed to do. So what we've done is work to put this planning approach in place. And so as we plan for fall 2020, the most important thing that we want to do is make sure that we're advancing that vision of personalizing learning for each one of our students. That's what we want to do. We want to see each of our kids be successful, and we believe we can do that by personalizing learning making sure it's engaging and meeting their unique needs. It's advancing that work of competency-based learning. And that really became more important than ever this spring. Like, how are we looking at where individuals are at, rather than where a class is at? Because we can use time differently and engage with those students differently. And while we all hope that school facilities can be opened safely on Tuesday, September 8th, we also know that we need to plan for a variety of scenarios, given the ongoing presence of COVID. So we're developing models to be able to effectively adapt to this. And by the way, Karen did put this in SharePoint so that you do all have this. But we worked on this at the end of last week. We worked on it yesterday as a cabinet. Then a number of us worked on this again today, really looking at a design process. Last week before teachers left, I left them a message. And I'm just going to read you part of what I said to them. Message I sent to all of our staff. I said, I think we're all thinking that school next fall is unlikely to look like it did in the fall of 2019. School is also unlikely to look like it did this spring. While we plan for a variety of likely scenarios, we have an opportunity in every scenario to chart a new course forward. We have an opportunity to build upon what we know and what we've learned about how school works and doesn't work for kids. So how might we take what we know and what we've learned and design the next amazing possibilities for students? And then I invited teachers to be a part of this design process here over the next couple of weeks. And it's been a lot of fun to hear back from a lot of people anxious to be a part of that. So what we're looking at, and we looked at a variety of different resources, literature out there, and so on, to get to kind of the common one is that there's these 4 public health scenarios that our community would likely be facing this fall. One is that the spread of the virus is controlled and there's effective mitigation practices in place. Another one is the virus lingers despite largely effective mitigation, and there is a fear of recurrence. It continues with fears of further spread as effective mitigation is not yet in place, or else it escalates and it requires significant public health interventions. We really don't know where it's going to go, so we have to plan for those. As we look at that, we said these are the assumptions that really need to guide our design. First and foremost, we need to continue to innovate and personalize learning, designing work and experiences to meaningfully engage each of our students, and competency-based learning guided by learner profiles and maps. And as we do that, we need to purposely align staff and resources to enhance student learning. So, and until the vaccine is widely administered, we know it will continue to have an impact in our community, whether that's real or just natural fears that people have. It's likely from the messages that are out there that there may be several waves of the virus that would cause us to need to design multiple models of learning, and physical distancing will likely continue no matter the model implemented. So based on those, we're designing for 3 different models right now for fall 20. And so in many ways, this is what our district operational plan is right now, because this is taking a lot of time and energy of our staff. So first is we need to design for an open campus. So when we say that, we mean schools are able to open with modifications required for health and safety and operations and teaching and learning. We'd love to be able to do this and see this in place, but it's probably not going to be as simple as, hey, everybody, come on in. But maybe we're going to be able to bring the majority of staff and students back to school within adjustments and operations to be able to adapt to health and safety expectations. As we do that, though, we believe a substantial number of students and staff will not be in attendance, either due to illness or family concerns with the virus. Like I said, I hear it from a lot of families just with concerns about this summer and summer school and youth activities and the precautions we're taking there and for next fall. We're also hearing from teachers and staff that have concerns about returning in the fall if it's face-to-face. And then also, as we're reviewing the literature and looking at things that we could anticipate significant rolling absences of staff and students. So how would we do that to make sure that learning continues? A second model that we designed for is modified campus schedules. And that's where schools are able to open with modified schedules to limit the number of students and staff who are in attendance to a percentage of the total. We don't know what that percentage would be, so we might have some come up with prototypes that would be 25%, some coming up with prototypes that are, if it's 50%, but we wouldn't be able to have everybody in attendance at the same time. So we'd have modifications in school schedules to be able to make that happen, where we blend in-person and extended flexible learning environments. This would require adjustments in operations to comply with health and safety mandates. We'd have some families, teachers, and staff who would have ongoing concerns about being at school for in-person learning. So how would we manage that with the staff that aren't comfortable being in person or families. We'd have to come up, there'd have to be ways for us to manage that. And then the last one is if the worst case scenario was that the pandemic escalated, extended flexible learning. If that's where our school facilities are not able to be open, how do we build on what we learned this spring? What we do know is that we did the best that we could this spring. And I think as a number of you said, we did a lot more than a lot of districts did with trying to do that learning, but that's also not something that we'd want to do with that model exactly for a full year, if we had to do that for a full year, for example. So how would we learn from what went really well? What are areas we'd want to improve? And we'd be looking at that so that we could improve on that model for this spring. So whatever model we're doing in the 2021 school year, we'll be able to learn from those experiences. So what we'll be doing is we're working with principals and so on to identify some of the teachers. We've got a lot of volunteers who are interested in coming in. This week of the 22nd, we're going to take 4 days of design, where we'll have input teams of teachers and staff, and then we'll have a design team that will include principals and some of our coordinators and others, taking all the ideas that those people have and coming up with options in each of these. And I'll walk through at the work session here in 2 weeks from today, that guiding change, more information, give you an update of where we're at that point, and be able to do some consultation with you around some of those kind of important issues. But I just wanted to let you know, and we'll have this online so people can be aware of that we are planning for these various scenarios, rather than trying to guess in just tier one. We haven't heard an exact date from MDE, but we've heard that likely at the end of July is when they will give us, tell us what the options are. That's why we're needing to do these multiple models of design now, because if we were to hear at the end of July, that would be too late to pull together one option. The other thing is we think it could be likely that we might have to be able to flex, and what we don't want to have to do is lose 5 days of instruction to flex from one model to another. So we want to have these designed and be able and really support people and do the work that we need to do. It would just be too much to do to wait and wait and wait to hear what that design might be. Hopefully they'll surprise us and tell us earlier, but the word we're hearing is most likely the end of July. So just wanted to give you that overview of where we're at, and we'll dig into it a little bit more at the work session in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
And then, if there's not any questions on that, can you all see that? Where it says ending 2019-20? All right.
Yep.
This is, on a more fun note, is how do we end this year? And again, is people feeling really positive about the things that were happening. It was fun to see. And I just wanted to share some of the pictures. Here's Centerview, their last day parade. Teachers greeting the students and families. And North Point. Park Terrace. These were all so well attended. It was a lot of fun to see. Woodcrest. I'm not sure what they're doing. It's that Bubbles, I think, up there. Westwood. And then the class of 2020. And Erica's on this call. I want to give Erica kudos along with Matthew Boucher, Michelle Johnson, and Angie Shea. There's a whole bunch of other people that chipped in, but the four of them really did an awesome job pulling everything together. So this is the senior salute in the upper left. That was a lot of fun. This was probably my favorite car coming through. Leah Tan with the cap on top of her car. That was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to let the kids get into school, be able to take pictures and so on with their families and individually. It was just a lot of fun to see. And then I wanted to share, here's our 2020 Teachers of the Year. It was just announced yesterday. Kim Harris Robinson from Westwood and Wendy Hatchner from the high school. Both just awesome people. I just love talking with both of them. So excited to share that with you as well. That is what I have for you.
Yes, I know the students and the families were very appreciative of everything the high school did to try and add a little normalcy back to the year. In fact, I've heard from I think somebody from almost every school now that they're hoping the end of year parade will become an annual tradition. I didn't have the heart to tell them that if the kids get to say goodbye to their teachers, I'm not sure we need a parade, but people were very excited about all the parades. So that was great. All right. Anything else? Anybody have any other questions for Jeff or anything before we move on? Okay. All right, moving on to action items. I'm going to be looking down, so if you have any questions, just jump in. All right, approval of the 2019-2020 budget revisions. Can I get a motion?
Motion by Strobel.
So, second, Wheaton.
Thank you. Motion by Strobel, second by Wheaton, to approve the revised 2019-2020 budget as presented. Any discussion? Okay. Amy?
Ms. Bo?
Yes.
Mr. Strobel?
Yes.
Ms. Forsberg?
Yes.
Mr. Kroon?
Yes.
Ms. Wheaton? Yes. Mr. Easter?
Yes.
Ms. Hennon?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, approval of the 2020-2021 proposed budget. And again, we know we'll have to revisit this with many of the changes we know are coming, but this gives us a place to start. So this is a motion to approve that proposed budget. Can I get a motion, please?
Forsberg.
Motion by Forsberg,
Second, Wheaton.
second by Wheaton. Any discussion? Okay. Amy, can you call the roll?
Ms. Bo?
Yes.
Mr. Strobel?
Yes.
Ms. Forsberg?
Yes.
Mr. Kroon?
Yes.
Ms. Wheaton, yes. Mr. Easter?
Yes.
Ms. Hennon?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to number 3, approval of the fiscal year 2022 long-term facility maintenance revenue budget, our application, excuse me. All right, can I get a motion to, as I said, approve that the fiscal year 2022 application for long-term facilities maintenance revenue be submitted to the Minnesota Department of Education? Is there a motion?
So moved. Easter.
Motion by Easter.
Second.
Is
Forsberg.
that Forsberg? Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Bo?
Yes.
Mr. Strobel?
Yes.
Ms. Forsberg?
Yes.
Mr. Kroon?
Yes.
Ms. Wheaton, yes. Mr. Easter?
Yes.
Ms. Hennon?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to a resolution approving Northeast Metropolitan Intermediate School District number 916's long-term facility maintenance budget and authorizing the inclusion of a proportionate share of those projects in the district's application for long-term facilities maintenance revenue. Is there a motion?
Forsberg.
Motion by Forsberg,
Second by Easter.
second by Easter, to adopt the following resolution. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District number 16, State of Minnesota as follows. The School Board of Northeast Metropolitan Intermediate School District number 916 has approved a long-term facility maintenance budget for its facilities for the 2021 and 2022 school year, pay 2021 levy, in the amount of $173,600 total, not our part, total. The various components of this program budget are shown in Exhibit A hereto and are incorporated herein by reference. Said budget is hereby approved. Minnesota Statute Subdivision 123B.53 Subdivision 1 as amended provides that if an intermediate school district budget is approved by the school boards of each of the intermediate school district member school districts, each member district may include its proportionate share of the costs of the intermediate school district program in its long-term facility maintenance revenue application. The proportionate share of the cost of the intermediate school district's program for each member school is to be included in its application shall be determined by utilizing a blended rate that you can read in depth on the agenda in front of you. The inclusion of the proportionate share of the district's long-term facility maintenance revenue application for fiscal year 2021 is hereby approved, subject to the approval of the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Education. And number 4, upon receipt of the proportionate share of the long-term facility maintenance revenue attributable to the intermediate school district program, the district shall promptly pay to the intermediate school district the applicable aid or levy proceeds. Ms. Wheaton.
Quick question.
Please.
As-
Yes,
as
I'm sorry,
mentioned,
discussion. Thank you.
We don't have the number, but we expect it to be around 15,000. I heard earlier. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was just under 15,000 was the estimate.
Thank you, John. Sorry about that. Any other discussion?
Yes, Forsberg. This is a relatively low request because 916 has 3 new buildings, so they don't require a lot of maintenance at this point in time.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Wheaton.
Ms. Bo,
Yes.
Mr. Strobel,
Yes.
Ms. Forsberg,
Yes.
Mr. Kroon,
Yes.
Ms. Wheaton, yes. Mr. Easter,
Yes.
Ms. Hennon.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, number 5, approval of the 2020-2021 annual Q-Comp Memorandum of Understanding. We'll get a motion and then we'll have some discussion on this one. Is there a motion?
Move.
A motion by Ms. Strobel, second by Forsberg. Ryan, do you have just a few words you could say about this?
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. The annual, what you're approving or what you're about to approve, hopefully, is what we have to approve to get the revenue that we use in our Q-Comp teacher evaluation process. The MOU that you're actually looking at, the only thing that's really changed over the last 3 to 4 years is the dates in the agreement. We have not changed the agreement, the amounts paid out to our teachers or our program for many years. So it really is, our teachers have to ratify it before it comes to you, and they ratified it like 200 and some odd votes to 3. So they're all
Great.
significant approval of the program, which always wasn't the case, by the way. So.
Thank you. Any other discussion or questions on that? Okay. Amy, can you call the roll?
Sorry, I lost my mouse. Ms. Bo,
Yes.
Mr. Strobel,
Yes.
Ms. Forsberg,
Yes.
Mr. Kroon,
Yes.
Ms. Wheaton, yes. Mr. Easter,
Yes.
Ms. Hennon.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, moving on to number 6, designation of school board meetings for the 2020-2021 school year. Is there a motion?
So moved. Easter.
Motion by Easter,
Second, Wheaton.
second by Wheaton. Thank you. To designate the second Tuesday of the month for the regular school board meeting, 7 p.m. with communication to the board and administration starting at 6:45, and the fourth Tuesday of the meeting for school board work sessions, 6 p.m. for the 2020-2021 school year, unless otherwise noted, at the District Service Center. You guys have seen these dates. Thank you for your flexibility on the September date so we can have as many people there and make that as productive as possible. I won't read those dates. You guys have seen them, but any discussion on that? Okay, Amy?
Ms. Bo,
Yes.
Mr. Strobel,
Yes.
Ms. Forsberg,
Yes.
Mr. Kroon,
Yes.
Ms. Wheaton, yes. Mr. Easter,
Yes.
Ms. Hennon.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And number 7, acknowledgement of gifts. Is there a motion?
So moved. Easter.
Motion by Easter,
Second.
Strobel.
second by, I heard it in there, John. Thank you. And thank you, Marilyn. Second by Strobel to adopt the following resolution. Whereas School Board Policy 706 establishes guidelines for the acceptance of gifts to the district, and whereas Minnesota Statute 465.03 states that a school board may accept a gift of real or personal property by the adoption of a resolution approved by 2/3 of its members, therefore be it resolved that the School Board of Spring Lake Park Schools accepts with deep appreciation the gifts given to the district that are being posted here. This is a really big gifts to the district month, especially thank you to the, I'm waiting for them to come up, but I know the Panther Foundation has a huge number on there. Oh, it disappeared. There we go. Yep, so that's the totals, and we heard about that from some of these from Clean earlier in the meeting. Just wonderful, wonderful supportive community. Anybody have any discussion or questions on those?
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, excellent.
Great. Okay, clerk, can you call the roll?
Ms. Bo? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Amy, yeah.
Yeah. Ms. Bo?
She might just be gone for a minute.
Okay. Mr. Strobel?
Yes.
Ms. Forsberg?
Yes.
Mr. Kroon?
Yes.
Sarah's not able to unmute.
I just unmuted her.
Ah, thank you. Nothing I did, unmuted myself. I'm so sorry.
Ms. Bo?
Yes, yes.
Ms. Sweeten, yes. Mr. Easter?
Yes.
Ms. Hennon?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. This will be the best part of having regular meetings again for everybody. Okay, board forum and reports. Anybody have anything to share?
A few things. Some 916 things. We had a report on distant learning and special education, and it really was a challenge. Some students have done very well with it, and some it's been really a struggle. We approved a fiscal year 21 preliminary budget of a little over $74 million. Excuse me, my pages are stuck together. We had a very special retirement. A lady named Linda Zarodka has been the executive assistant and has served that district for 50 years. She started as a high school student as one of her high school projects and has been there ever since. She served 4 superintendents, lots of board members, and it was his regret and best wishes that we wish her. She has also served the 916 Foundation, I think, since its inception. 916 will soon start the process of looking for a new superintendent, since Superintendent Hayes tells us we have not seen any official documents, but tells us that she will retire at the end of next school year. And the other thing, if you have not looked at MSBA news clippings today, please do so. There is an article, I believe it's from US News and Report, that talks about the difficulties schools will have reopening in the fall, particularly from the expense side. And that article encourages a great deal of additional federal funding, which, may or may not happen, but talks about all the extra supplies and probably extra janitorial staff to do in-depth cleaning on a very regular basis. And the one thing that really jumped out at me was that as it stands currently, buses will only be able to carry 25% of their capacity. So that would be a real hurdle to jump in order to get students to school or to get any number of them there. And certainly we can't come up with a lot more buses and bus drivers. And so one more headache for the superintendent. Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. Anybody else?
I would encourage you all to read that particular article because it's in today's MSBA clipping service.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to closed session in a minute. The only action we'll take after the closed session will be adjournment. And I know there are a few people listening, thank you for joining us. Your call will be automatically disconnected when we go into closed session, just because of that nature of that meeting. Can I get a motion to enter into closed session to discuss employee negotiations?
Forsberg.
Motion by Forsberg,
Second by Easter.
second by Easter. Any discussion? Okay, clerk, can you call the roll? Amy, you're on mute.
Ms. Paul,
Yes.
Mr. Strobel,
Yes?
Ms. Forsberg,
Yes.
Mr. Kroon,
Yes.
Ms. Wheaton, yes. Mr. Easter,
Yes.
Ms. Hennon,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. We will be going into closed session at 8:31.